All right, so today I'm going to introduce a new segment, 2-Minute Toolbox. Each week we're going to take 2 minutes and talk about a toolbox safety item related to something that we all really deal with. And today we're going to talk about incident reporting. My very first nuclear outage where I worked at, I had a buddy of mine, one of the carpenters, he got a splinter. I sat down next to him, had lunch with him, and he pulled out his pocket knife, started digging into his finger, and I'm like, what in the world are you doing? He just looks at me, he's like, I got a splinter. Leave me alone. So I left him alone. He was digging out the splinter. He finally got it out, finished his meal, went back to work right after lunchtime. And didn't say a thing to anybody. Shift was over with that day. He went on home. Everything was fine. Next day he came into work. It was a little infected. It was a little red, but didn't really think nothing of it. The next day he came to work and he couldn't even touch his fingertips together like that because it was so sore. It was so sensitive. It got so infected and he really couldn't do much. So at that point, he really didn't have a choice but to communicate that to the safety guy on site, who in turn went and took him to medical. And they tried cleaning it, but really they had to take him to the hospital to get treated because what they had was not going to be strong enough. Spirit fingers. So my buddy and the safety guy went to the hospital and they had to give him some heavy duty antibiotics to quell the infection. But they were going to wait and see how the antibiotics took hold. I know everyone here is the safety guy. I know everyone here is some members of management. Report injuries, report incidents, no matter how small. And in this case, it could have helped out a lot. It could have kept him from having his finger getting infected. It could have helped the company from having to pay for the medical bills. If the organization didn't want to take him to the hospital because there was no way of proving that it happened on site, then it could be tied up within a legal dispute between the employer and the employee and their lawyers. And there's a lot more money on both sides of the fence that has to be spent unnecessarily. When you report incidents, not only does it save yourself in case it got worse later on down the road, it will prove to the company that it actually happened on site, but we could also possibly treat the injury. If you would have reported the incident to the safety guy, they could have taken him to the medical facility where the nurse could have removed the splinter, could have cleaned the wound, bandaged it up, and then he would have been good to go for the rest of the day and not have to worry about infection. But in this case, he almost lost his finger. So it's very important. Ladies and gentlemen, report all the injuries, report all your incidents, no matter how small you might think it is. Something like this benefits both people. If you get injured on the job, obviously the employer wants to try and minimize OSHA recordables. They want to try to minimize OSHA reportables, but that does not mean that you're not going to get the same level of treatment. Now, obviously the employer would probably want you to come back to work the next day, depending on what you would be capable of doing, but that saves them from having an OSHA recordable, and then it also saves you from being out of day of wages. Workers' compensation only pays about 60% of your salary. So if you get laid up on workers' compensation, which for some reason, a lot of people like doing that, you're not going to get your full salary. So report the injuries, report the incidents to your supervisor, to the safety guy, so it can get documented on the record that it happened on site, and let the employer take care of you. Doing this will save you a lot of headache and a lot of money if you didn't do it. I am way past the 2-minute mark. My bad.